talk a lot about value proposition and offers. And then thirdly, you need to reduce the friction. So if someone finds out about you, they're presented with an offer, a way to get involved, they want to get involved, to take an action. How do you get out of their way and make it as seamless as possible? In the world of digital, those three buckets kind of translate into these three variables: traffic, average gift, and conversion. You multiply those three things together, it equals revenue, right? So you can grow traffic. If your average gift and conversion rate stay the same, more revenue, right? Same thing. If you increase your conversion rate with the same amount of traffic, more revenue. If you increase how much the average person gives, the other two things stay constant, it's more revenue. That's what this kind of pro forma chart talks about. So when we're going through this and when we work with clients and things like today, what you should be trying to think about are what are some simple ways that you can increase traffic, increase conversion rate, or think about how to increase average gift. Those will lead you to raising more money online. So those are the things that we think about in the process that we're going to walk through. And then kind of marketing 101 or digital marketing basics, you promote an offer, right? Largely through email or an ad or a social media post, something like that. It points people to a landing page where they then qualify the offer, right? They go, is this something that I want to do? Yes or no. They can learn a little bit more. And then they make the decision and actually complete the action. So they fill out the form, they put in their payment information. So we'll talk a lot about offer to qualify to decision, or traffic to average gift, or motivation to conversion. And all through that process, this is what we're looking to do. We're trying to get these like micro yeses, right? I think one of the things that I had to learn about digital marketing is it's sequential. The advantage of digital marketing is you can nudge people one little yes at a time, right? They get the email, they go, yeah, that looks cool. They go to the landing page, oh, this looks great. Then complete the donation. You don't have to just throw it all in at once all the time. So as we go through this process, we're looking for little ways to optimize and change things, whether it's through the email, the landing page, or the conversion page. That's what we do. So our work is generally over 12 to 24 months to overhaul online giving. We replace tools, we get into the infrastructure, we increase communication volume. We're really not focused on the short term, kind of running a 3-month campaign. Those can be real hit or miss. We've hit on some, we've definitely missed on some. If that's what you're looking to do, A, I'm the wrong person, and B, I think it's the wrong approach. It needs to be thinking about how do we continuously grow and improve over a longer period of time, right? That's something that we're generally not great at, right? It's like, oh my goodness, we need to make payroll, I need money next month. I understand that. It's hard to build a sustainable marketing and fundraising platform if you're always in that position. All right, everyone good? Yes, question? Yeah. No, it's good. Any other requests? Yeah. Yeah, I'll talk about Facebook ads more so, Facebook posts a little bit, but we'll cover that. Anyone else before we kind of dive into some nerdery? All right. So we're going to talk about increasing motivation and going through donation pages, yours or everyone else's. This is the biggest failure of your and our donation pages, is we don't communicate value, or we don't communicate why someone should give. So this is the kind of fundamental equation that a donor is looking when they go to give. What's the value I'm getting out of this donation versus the cost? And it's not just money for reward. There's a lot of variables that go into motivation, and there's a lot of variables that go into friction or their cost. This is a conversion heuristic that some super smart people have come up with as a way to think about conversion. I think it's really useful, and it's something that kind of we'll circle back to and keep in the back of your mind. But basically it's saying that conversion is the C there, is a factor of 4 times motivation plus 3 times value proposition or clarity. Do I know what this is going to do? Plus 2 times incentive minus friction. So what's my incentive to give today, and what's the friction that I have to overcome, minus 2 times anxiety. So the anxiety is like, is this page secure? Will my donation be used properly? Is this organization trustworthy? Things like that. But the important thing in this heuristic is they're saying motivation is the biggest factor, right? This is why a lot of brutal websites and terribly positioned organizations can still raise a lot of money because their donor base is hugely motivated, so they'll put up with tons of friction. Even though they shouldn't have to, they will because they're so committed, right? Then next is value or clarity. That's hugely important. People really know, like, oh yes, my donation will really make a difference. Again, they'll put up with a little bit more anxiety and a little bit more friction along the way. And then incentive minus friction, we'll talk a little bit about incentives, we'll talk a lot about friction, and then some anxiety factors. But this is kind of how we're going to go about thinking when we get into positioning value propositions and messages, is does the motivation factors outweigh the friction or cost factors? So here's the value proposition question. So this comes from some super smart people out of Texas called Next After. I'm like their little Canadian Padawan. But this is their value proposition question. If I'm your ideal donor, why should I give to you rather than some other organization or not at all? I think this is a really, really important question. And when you go about writing emails, you go about writing your donation page, just think about this question. Because it forces you to think, A, not as yourself, as a donor, but knowing that they do not have to give to you, right? The best performing donation pages convert at 15%, which means 85% of people click donate and do not complete. And that's the best. Go ahead.
Are those for things like animal shelters and that kind of stuff?
What do you mean, the donation conversion rate, or?
Well, I think that the answer to that question is mostly why do people donate? What types of things do they donate for? You might not fall into that, puppies and kittens category, right?
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? Those pull at the heartstrings.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking, to give that stat, what type of organizations are they donating?
So that's from a benchmark study from M&R out of the States with 80 of the largest organizations across sectors. So there would be animals in there would be relief organizations in there would be a lot of organizations in there. So that 15% stat is aggregate, and it's large organizations.
Can we download these slides somewhere, or should we be writing like crazy?
You'll get the slides for sure. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. You'll get the slides. Just write down questions or little notes. Don't worry about writing down the stats or facts. So one, it's like, why should someone give? Normally we're okay. We're not great. We're okay at that. But then it's like, well, why should they give to you versus you? There's 85,000 registered charities in Canada and 1.5 million across the border. Why should they choose you? And then this question is, or why just not give? Why don't just buy a pair of Toms? We get a pair of shoes, and a pair of shoes go to African kids. So when we start thinking about it, like, oh, they have choice. Donors have choice. We have to pull them up this funnel. This is a really important question to answer. So the folks at Next After kind of summarized, here's 4 ways that you can answer the value proposition question. The first is just appeal, right? Why would they like your cause? Why should they donate? Again, that's a pretty basic one. Exclusivity, maybe you're the only one doing this, you're the only one in the area, you have some unique model or something like that. Credibility is just, why should I trust you? And the last one is clarity. So you don't really need to be persuasive at this point. It's just like, this is what we do. This is what's going on. And of these, appeal is multivariate, like if you're kittens versus this versus religious donor, like knowing what will motivate an individual donor is really, really challenging. So we should make progress on that. And exclusivity can be tricky. What's so different about us? But these last 2, we should be able to do no problem. Right? Why should we be trusted, and what are we doing? Like clearly, what impact are we having, or what is our work? So this is what I mean by there's a myriad of factors. This man named Joseph Mixer did a bunch of research on donor behavior and psychology and came up with this huge long list of rewards, both internal and external, and social factors and negative factors. And basically when you get into it, you're like, donors are messed up. Because humans are messed up, right? It's hard to know what will trigger a motivated donor at that unique point in time. But this is what some of them are. And here's an example of one kind of donation page that's trying to appeal to their specific audience, right? They very clearly say tax deductible, strategic investment, and future of America. So they're trying to tap into a smart, investor-like donor, right? Say, this is a wise choice. You're a shrewd investor in the future of America by making your donation, right? They're trying to appeal to a particular type of donor with this copy. This clicker. Exclusivity. This is an example from Charity Water. They have a 100% model where they have 2 separate bank accounts. One covers all their overhead and the other one goes to the programs. But it's very unique to them. It's kind of exclusive. People are copying it now, but they were one of the first ones to really do this. And so this is what kind of makes them exclusive, right? It's, yeah, there's water charities, but 100% goes to our programs. Credibility, this is an organization called WOTC, but they just have like, oh, we've been mentioned in Wall Street Journal and NPR. And so if you're like, who's WOTC? Oh, these are credible. Well, maybe not credible, we'll see. Here's publications that some people trust. So you could use donor testimonials here. This is where like badges or seals or quotes, anything that kind of builds credibility. This is a way to kind of answer that question on a page in particular. And then this is a good example of clarity. So this is a really cool charity in the States called News Story. They also have a 100% model actually, but build life-changing communities. Your donation builds 100%, hires locals, buys materials, and builds. It's very clear that they build homes immediately, right? And that may seem obvious, but especially when we get into donation pages, if you look at your own or send it to a friend, it's not nearly as clear for the most part, like what you do clearly, right? We'll get real into the weeds and we're regenerating the youth of, Greater Ontario. No idea what that means, right? We use this flowery language that means nothing to most people. So being very clear, very specific is very important. So that's kind of how you can communicate value proposition in your website and in your donation pages, those 4 factors. And then the other way you can do it more specifically is kind of create this offer. So here's kind of 4 components to a great fundraising offer. You need to have a human-sized problem, right? Saying that the world's going to end and we're all going to die is a big problem, but it's not very inspiring. It doesn't feel like my 50 bucks can do anything, right? A human-sized problem. A solution that's easily understood, right? Again, we can nerd out on the program side and talk about how unique and how amazing this is, but is it easily understood by someone that you're talking to? A price point that seems like a good deal. What does 50 bucks do? What can $100 do? I don't know what it's going to do. And then a sense of urgency to act today, right? Because your cause will be around, the issue that you're trying to solve will be around in 6 months, so why should they give today? So what this kind of looks like, so a human-sized problem. This is just one example, I'm sure there's plenty of others, but this is, News Story again. Just, here's a family who's living in a tent. They need a home, right? It's pretty simple to understand that people need a house, needs a home, needs a place to live. I understand it in human terms, right? Here's a family. This is a great way to tell stories of one person in particular. Taps on something called the identifiable victim effect, where we connect with an individual more than we connect with numbers or nameless or faceless people. But it's a way to understand the problem in a simple way. Then a solution that's easily understood. Again, so in the News Story example, we build a home for 6,000 bucks. It's pretty simple, right? People need a home, we build a home. Now they have layers in their site too, like, oh, model and how do you do it? But fundamentally it's like, here's the problem, here's the solution, and then move on. So you can see them side by side, that's kind of what it looks like. And here's where tangibility is really, really important. There's a great book called Experimental Approaches to Charitable Giving, something like that. And it's a series of 14 different like PhD level research. They boil it down, so there's one kind of research focus per chapter, and it's somewhat digestible, but it has a lot of great studies on why donors do the things they do. And one of them that they focus on is tangibility. So in this study here, they positioned 2 different organizations in this controlled environment. One had no geographic focus, no specific mention of how the money was being used or what the problem was. And the other one just said, this is where we're working, here's how we use the money, here's the problem. The one that did that raised 3 times more money than the one that was pretty generic. And again, when you look at that conversion equation, right, donors are anxious. What will my money do? When you say, we're working in Uganda, we're providing buses to children, they have no way to get to school. Like, it's not that complicated, but we don't do it nearly enough, right? Tangibility is hugely important. So they ran a follow-up study and said, well, let's look at the exact same organization and the exact same project, but just frame it slightly differently. So then this is with Oxfam. And all they did was talk about the same project, one way more tangible, one way less tangible, 2 times the amount of money raised when it comes to donors, right? Same project, same work, just positioned differently. Double the donations, right? There's huge power and opportunity in these little optimizations, and a lot of it has to do with communication and offers. Communicate in concrete ways. I can't tell you how important that is. We sit in boardrooms, we sit in staff rooms where everyone knows and talks the same language, and we come up with garbage copy that means nothing to the people that read your emails, right? We have no natural feedback loop, since we're testing is hugely important. So human-sized problem, a price point that seemed like a good deal. So again, talking in concrete ways, here's an example of a Vancouver charity that does great digital fundraising. They calculate everything into meals roughly, so someone can go, oh, I can help 30 people for $100. It's great. I think there's a philosophical argument about what this means, and are we creating, really needy donors, and are we lying to them? We can discuss that. What I do know is this works every single time because it helps answer the question. Just give an example, what will my $100 do? And then a sense of urgency to act today. This is often the hardest one for us to do as fundraisers, again. So one of the things that you can do, this is why year end is typically ludicrous, because there's a hard line, like you must give before December 31st. So there is a sense of urgency for people to go, oh, I have to give. So this was a year end campaign we did where we just went with it. So we just had a countdown clock saying, like, this is how much time you have to the end of the year. And then we also had a match. So a match is another way to kind of incentivize people to donate today, to take advantage of a matching donation. So that those are kind of gimmicks or incentives to strengthen your offer, to get people to communicate or to give today. So I strongly suggest people try adding incentives. You can do it in the form of a match, you can do it in the form of a seed fund. So $10,000 has already been given. You can have an arbitrary end date, give before kids go back to school. It's really important to have a sense of urgency for donors, otherwise they'll just kind of get the email and kind of move on. So on that note, Science Magazine did did you have a question? Just stretching. Science Magazine had a great study where they looked at these incentives. So they did the exact same appeal out to 10,000 people, so 4 groups of 10,000. 1, they said your donation will be matched. 2, they said $10,000 has already been given. 3, they said $10,000 has covered all the overhead of this program. And the 4th one, they did nothing. It was just a generic ask. So any guesses on which one was the best out of those 4 options? Anyone? The match. It's a good guess. Anyone else? Overhead. Mo. You nailed it. This is what they found. Seed and match basically did twice as good as nothing, right? So first point is try an incentive of some kind. It will help inspire giving more than doing nothing. But the big, terrible takeaway from that study was that covering overhead was almost twice as valuable as those incentives. And I'm not going to go on a whole overhead rant and how I think it's absolute crap, and we in this room are some of the most guilty parties of creating that situation. Happy to talk about it later. But the biggest thing is that what no overhead covers is it makes donors feel like they're making a bigger difference. That's all that these incentives are trying to do, right? My donation will be doubled, I'll help finish a campaign, where all of it goes to the thing that I most care about, right? So the takeaway shouldn't be necessarily, oh, we have to cover all of our overhead, although you could do that. The principle, again, is how do you make the donor feel like they are making a direct difference in terms of how they're donating. And then you have to calculate the value throughout, right? So in the email you have, here's our value statement or offer from Facebook ad or Facebook post, value statement offer. It's reflected on the landing page, value statement offer. So we need to be reiterating it, just having it on one place and then pushing them through, right? We're pulling them up the donor funnel. We need to be continually reiterating our value and what is going on and how they are making a difference. And consistency of offer. This is if you run like specific campaigns, can be important as well, right? If you say $50 helps a child and then they click donate and then they go to this page that says nothing about helping a child or $50, there's a good chance they're going to balance and piece out because it's not consistent, right? All right, so that is some of how we go about creating offers and displaying value through value proposition. Any questions at this moment? No? We're going to take a little sip of cold coffee.
So,
Yeah.
just on the overhead,
and maybe you're gonna talk about this more later, but you're saying making donors feel like more of their money's going toward the issue rather than overhead.
Yeah.
How do you do that with integrity? I mean, if you don't have money to cover the overhead, I mean, you still have to cover your administration expenses.
Yeah, so I think crafting really good value proposition or offers is 80% of the battle, right? What you're trying to avoid is donate today, support our work, right? Like that's what a lot of what we say.
Yeah.
So even just going like, your donation today will directly influence the next generation of leaders in Toronto. $50 can help them get a book, right? You're not talking about overhead covering or anything, you're just positioning the work that you do in a way that makes sense to them. If you go the whole overhead covering route, that's a much different discussion. And like Charity Water, News Story that they do, they have separate bank accounts. Like they're very serious about it. They almost went bankrupt because they were so committed to this idea. They don't recommend it to most people. And a lot of people have used it like, oh, overhead's covered, but it's really not. So that is a problem.
Yeah, you don't want to say that unless it is, you know.
Yeah, and the reverse side of the 100% model, the beauty is that they have donors that only give to overhead, right? And their position is like the super champions. They are part of these exclusive groups. They give monthly or 3-year commitments, and they're the ones who really fuel the organization forward. And so they do a really good job of positioning kind of the overhead for those types of donors. And I think that's the encouraging side, is more and more donors, it's happening too slowly, but are understanding if we really want to see problems and solutions for key problems, we need to invest in charitable organizations. So that part's getting better. All right, so that's the offer and motivation. So now, how the heck do you get people to engage with your offer and motivation? So we're gonna kind of fly through, all this stuff. Value proposition and offers could be its own like workshop, so it could driving traffic, so it could email, so it could Facebook. But hopefully we'll have some things in here for you. I want to use the analogy of gardening. My wife and I moved to a home where we actually have a yard for the first time like in our lives. And we have to take care of a yard, which kind of sucks. So we have like lawnmowers and weed eaters and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of how we should view driving traffic, is we're kind of taking care of the garden. And this is what I mean. First the value of traffic. So again, it's one of those 3 variables, right? Traffic, average gift, conversion. In theory, if you just increase traffic, you'll get more money. That's not always true because traffic carries different value. An email is way more valuable in terms of donations than a random Google search or AdWord perhaps. But generally speaking, traffic goes up, donations go up. The added benefit of traffic obviously is like volunteer form completions go up. Social media following goes up. Traffic kind of lifts all the other things going on in your organization for the most part. So in this kind of gardening, lawn care analogy, search marketing is like the lawnmower, okay? So it's like a big old tool that you can just do big swaths of your grass. It's not the most fine, right? You don't want to go around the edges necessarily, but it can take care of a lot of bulk. It can get the big heavy weeds down in your grass. So just quickly, we live in a hugely search-based world. I don't know if you're like me, I don't even type in the URLs of things, I just pop it into Google and click on the thing that I'm searching for. We're increasingly in a search world, right? We use Siri and Alexa, and these are just iterations of a search-based world where we're asking questions and getting the results. In the world of search marketing, there's kind of these 2 prongs, right? There's SEO. I'm not an SEO expert. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I have other people who take care of that. But that's like earned. That's when your content builds up authority over time. It engages people. It ranks high. So it's like organic. That's kind of the SEO side of the puzzle. And then there's the PPC side, or pay per click. And that's where you basically just buy traffic. You say, I'm willing to buy people who search for this term, I will pay up to X, and here's my ad. Google cranks it through their algorithm. You show up high on the page or not, and you generate clicks. So there's an earned strategy, or organic, and there's a paid strategy through PPC, earned and bought. What's important about search, though, is that if you look into your own Google Analytics, search probably is about 60 to 80% of traffic to your website, generally speaking. The combination of organic and paid is almost always the largest source of traffic to your website. So it's important to know. Again, part of it is we live in the search-based world, but this is how a ton of people are finding your organization. The other interesting thing is, generally speaking, about 70 to 80% of all your website visits are new, right? The returning visitor number is generally pretty low, like 20 to 30. So when you think about that, go back to the value proposition and importance of offers is probably 3/4 of people visiting your website are new. They probably don't know that much about you. So can they easily understand what you do, who you are, what your value is? Because if not, they're gone and they may never come back. All right, this is an example of a paid strategy. So I'm going to talk a lot about the ad grant. I heard some people talking, I think it was you guys talking about the ad grant. You have to apply to TechSoup. I've talked on it before. We kind of have a spin-off company that only manages AdWords. So we'll talk a lot about that in the paid sense. So this is a paid strategy for a volunteer ad. So the charity is third behind World Vision and YWCA. Here's what an SEO only or unpaid strategy would look like. We don't show up on the page. They don't show up on the page. And this is page 10. Right? So left to their own SEO devices, they're on page 10. Whereas they're third when we use a paid strategy. And if you're like most humans, this is your experience when you search. God help me, what are you still doing here? Yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
It was announced last week that Google is moving away from search and moving to a newsfeed platform. So how does that, do you have any idea of what you're talking about today, how that would affect us?
No idea.
Okay.
Nope.
I'm sorry, what did you say, they're moving towards a what
A
platform?
newsfeed strategy.
Newsfeed strategy.
So there'll be no, the search that we see now on Google will be gone.
When?
Huh?
Soon?
That's a format. It's not going to be line. It's going to be more like a columnist sort of arrangement.
Yeah.
So I'm not familiar with that exact change. The only thing I say is it's been a long part of Google changing their algorithms to be more content and engagement based, right? So it used to be like, say this keyword for SEO rankings just like 50 times and copy it over and over, and you could rank high. They've been moving more and more to like, what content do people click? Just read an article yesterday, click-through rate is probably the #1 thing generating your ad ranking now. It's much more about content and engagement. So I'm sure that's what the newsfeed will promote, but I can't speak confidently. So a Google ad grant can help you overcome the shortcomings of your own SEO strategy, right? So how do you go about getting it? Well, you got to go through TechSoup. You got to register with them. But it's pretty easy to find out and apply. They updated their site not that long ago, so it's much easier to kind of navigate. So the Google Ad Grant is one program within Google for Nonprofits. So you can use like Gmail and Google Apps and Google Docs. They have a YouTube program, all within this Google for Nonprofits program. AdWords is one of those programs. A few things to remember, there are some limitations and they can be somewhat severe depending on what you're trying to do. So it's text only, you can't do the display ads, the visual things. And the big thing on the strategy side is it's limited to $2 on your cost per click bid. We'll talk about a little bit of how that works, but basically the really high value words like donate, you'll probably never have a chance to rank anywhere close to the top because organizations are bidding with real money for those words, $15 to $20 sometimes. So your $2 bid, even if it's highly local and engaged, you're not going to be that high. So you can see if you're eligible, almost all nonprofits and charities are eligible here in Canada, with a few exceptions. TechSoup will know more of the exceptions than I will. You can easily find out if you're eligible. So here's a couple. So government, hospital, health. The foundations of hospital and health sometimes can get the grant, right? If you have a foundation that holds assets or does the fundraising but doesn't necessarily do program or service delivery, sometimes you can get it. You must be registered with TechSoup. I'm sure there's people who will be happy to talk to you. You're probably already registered if you're here. And you must be a nonprofit or a charity registered in Canada, but a lot of organizations can apply and get this. The application is pretty straightforward, except the AdWords part can be a little tricky. So one, you got to get a validation token from TechSoup, your account. It's like this hexadecimal alphanumeric thing. You put it in to validate your organization. And one of the tips is to be in incognito mode. If you have multiple Gmail accounts, this can be really frustrating. You can create your account under the wrong account. It's not linked to your AdWords. This has happened a lot, and it's hard to unwork. You got to keep creating it. It's very painful. So the suggestion is, when you apply, go in incognito mode and log in with the only Gmail account that you want to use. They're promoting more and more AdWords Express, which basically just kind of automates for you. We don't suggest that. We think you should do Classic. Their Express algorithm is really based on like small businesses and kind of local ads for like tire shops and mechanics and things like that. We suggest you go Classic, even if you're not going to use all the bells and whistles. I still think it's a better approach to take. And then you have to actually create your AdWords account, and this is where they have some limitations. So it has to be like US dollar, the cost per click has to be less than $2, search network only. They lay it out very clearly. It's just follow this thing exactly as they say. They have a guide, like just do it and you're fine. If you do it in incognito, you're fine, you'll get it. And you just need to create one kind of sample account to get approved, and then you'll be on your way. Yes?
My tech savvy bottom line, what does going incognito mean?
Oh, so like in Chrome or Safari, it's like private browsing. It just opens up a new window that doesn't take in any of your like current logins and cookies and stuff like that. So that way, if you're logged into it, it just logs you out kind of with all your Gmail stuff. So this is how the AdWords is kind of structured. You've got campaigns at the high level, and then you've got ad groups, which is just a kind of a set of related keywords, which then produce the ads. All right? Campaign, that's where you set your targeting and your budget. Ad groups is where you collect your keywords. It's just about 15 to 20. You can have a little less, maybe a little more, but you don't want like hundreds, and you want more than one. And then your ad, this triggers off what people search, and that's what actually people see and will click on is the ad itself. So when you structure things, you can have like a campaign, say volunteer. Keywords could be like volunteer at soup kitchen, volunteer in Kitchener, volunteer to social service, whatever these kind of keywords to your organization might be. And then you'd show an ad about volunteering to your organization, and then they would be able to see the ad, click it, and go to a landing page that hopefully is talking about volunteering with some of the similar content or words, and then ideally with an action. So the connection between landing page and ad is really important. You can have really good ads, but if you just point to the home page or some arbitrary page that doesn't talk about the ad, this thing quality score is going to go down, your ads won't rank as high, and it's going to be harder and harder for you to have a good AdWords strategy. I see some eyes kind of glazing over. So keywords are actually the words that people search. So there's a search term. So I could say, I want to volunteer in Vancouver. That's a search query, but the keyword might be volunteer Vancouver. See the difference between search term and keyword? Often gets confused. So you bid on keywords. So in that example, we're bidding on volunteer in Vancouver, not on I want to volunteer in Vancouver. That would be like a phrase match or a different strategy. So that's what the keywords are, right? And so they're generally, keywords that people would search for that relate to your cause and what you're doing. So one of the big questions is like, what ads show when? And no one knows like 100% for sure. I mentioned Google increasingly is moving towards engagement as being the main metric, or click-through rate. But this is the rough equation where this idea of kind of relevance is the ad that you're showing, relevance to what they're searching for, and is it going to a URL or a place that is also relevant? So like this idea of relevance. And then user experience. If people go to that page and bounce, like I mentioned earlier, that will impact your quality score. And basically quality score is what dictates how high up you show on the page. And it's a big function of click-through rate. So when we build our accounts, click-through rate is the number 2 thing that we keep track of. The number 1 thing is conversions when we get them set up. So click-through rate is really important. And then it needs to, again, work in relationship with your landing page. Otherwise, it'll be tough to sustain. So we'll just pause there for any questions. Yeah.
I think one of the big problems is that they're limiting it to $2 a click.
Yeah.
So how do you get around that? How do you find words that people search that every advertiser out there is not paying for? It's kind of almost seems like an impossibility.
Yeah, I will talk a little bit about that in a second.
Okay.
Because it is very unique to the AdWords strategy. So setting it up and putting it to work, having a clean kind of campaign structure is really important. We take over accounts sometimes that have, you know, dozens of campaigns, and it's a nightmare to understand what's going on. So having a clean campaign structure is important, and here's a few suggestions or ways you can do it. One is follow your navigation structure of your website, because it generally relates to content areas or what people are looking for. So in this scenario, you could have like an about, this is who we are, this is our organization and what we do. Concert and events, that could be a campaign that you're promoting concert and events. The music store for people to shop, donate for people to give, outreach programs for people to get involved, and blog for news and stories. So as long as your website navigation is okay, then replicating that on the content side, that's a very content-focused way to structure your campaigns. So it could look something like this. We suggest between like 4 to 8 maybe in terms of your core campaign structure. If you get more than that, it's going to be kind of hard to manage, and then you start having huge overlap across campaigns. But this is what that could look like in that scenario. Oh, and so one of the, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I lost you.
Oh,
Were you talking about being on a website?
no, so you get to choose campaigns. So campaigns go into ad groups, which then go into your ads. And one of the ideas is to create your campaigns that line up with your website. So if your website is like home, about us, get involved, then actually create campaigns that are about your brand and who you are, donate, news and stories. So then in this example, news and stories, or maybe donate, give, you could have ad groups that are about monthly giving or seasonal giving, and you can talk specifically about that. Whereas branded about will be your organization name or your old organization name. So it's just a way to structure your account so that it stays kind of clean. And one of the ways is to just, what's your website, top level navigation, create those as campaigns. That's what that idea was. If you've never used AdWords, this can kind of be confusing. One of the key strategy, oh, go ahead.
So you said when you're doing the AdWords campaigns, and then once they click the link, that they should end up on your page that has an action. So if you create a campaign that's branded, there's no action. That's your homepage.
Not necessarily. So you could go to your homepage. A lot of branded campaigns go to a donate page, or like an email sign up page.
So even if you're structuring it,
They don't necessarily have to. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you're promoting music store, concert, and events, you should point to concert and events.
no,
Branded is the one
Yeah.
is the one that you can point them a little bit different
And
places.
what if you have, like, what you do if you have research? Just you send them to your research, but there's no action there.
Yeah.
You send them to a specific campaign that's dealing with a specific type of research. Like, where would you send them?
I'd send them to the research page, and that's a good
No,
example
no
of.
action.
Well, I'd say you should have a sign up for email action everywhere.
That's everywhere, yeah.
It should be everywhere. Yeah. So it's fine to point content when it's just consuming news, stories, annual reports. Those are really hard to create actions off of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with having people read your research. That's great. Just it's good. It's not going to help you drive revenues, right?
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
not directly.
No. Okay.
Yeah. So branded campaigns, you can point them kind of wherever you want. Again, it needs to be linked to what they're searching. If they're searching for you, it should be about you. The first thing is own your brand. I know, so your organization name should be in this branded keyword campaign. Variations of your name, misspellings of your name. You want anyone who searches for your organization to make sure that you show up. If you're uniquely named, it's less of a problem, but a lot of churches are, Hope something, or there's a lot of hopes, so you may not show up first. Another way to structure it is campaigns per action. This is a different way. So you go, what do people do? They can read, they can donate, they can volunteer, they can attend an event, they can fundraise. So you can create a campaign structure based on action. So in this scenario, the research one would be under like read content or something like that. So the goal there would just be point people and just consume our content, right? Whereas other campaigns would be focused on signing up for email, starting a fundraiser, making a donation. It's a different way to structure your campaign so that it's quasi-clean. Question? In this case, in both cases, but particularly if you go the action-focused way, tracking conversions is unbelievably important. Otherwise, you're just left clicking or tracking kind of time on site or bounce rate, things that aren't as useful in terms of actions, particularly when you're driving engagement. So this is probably the biggest hurdle that we have with organizations is they're not set up properly to track events or conversions. So this is how ideally it could look. When you go into Google Analytics, you can see the number of email signups per campaign. You can see where traffic's coming from. You can see how many donations you have, the average donation amount. This data and information should all be coming into Google Analytics so you can assess value, which campaigns are working, which keywords are working or not. Without it, you're only left with the default data that Google gives you, and it's not conversion-focused data. So tracking is hugely important.
Where do you track that? In your own website or through some kind of Google thing? Like, is there a special spot for this special campaign tracking?
Yeah, the easiest thing is for every action, you go to the confirmation page. So you donate, then you go to a thank you page. You sign up for email, you go to a thank you page. You, whatever the app, sign up for a fundraiser, attend an event, you go to a confirmation page. When you have a confirmation page, you can build a goal in Google Analytics. So people land on this page and then they go to this page. That's a goal. You can import the goal into AdWords. Then you can track conversions. That's the easiest and best way to do it. Otherwise, you do have to get into like code snippets, which can be tricky. Again, if you've got full access to your site and a developer or somebody who knows what they're doing, it's fine. But generally speaking, it's easiest to just build confirmation pages and goals and then import them. And then if you do it right, it should all show up in your Google Analytics, so you don't need to work through your CRM to get reports and things like that. It's a pretty big deal. Yeah.
Ultimately, we just have to be tickled by this information, and then can we hire you or one of your companies or subsidiaries to do it for us? Because we don't really want to do it, but we're loving the seminar.
Yeah, so that's a good point. You don't want me to do it, but someone can do it.
We want the guy that does this.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, I'll mention this when we get to donation pages, is our business model is that you shouldn't necessarily need to know all this, right? You should be program experts, you should manage a board, you should meet face-to-face, you should write grant proposals. I don't know if everyone in the room should actually be masters at AdWords or not. It's maybe not the best usage of your time. And so our whole idea is spend your time on the things that you have to do and outsource some of this stuff to nerds behind desks. That's kind of part of our business model, but it is something that you can take over and do.
So I just want to, I guess, so I spend like a lot of time on like funneling stuff, like analytics, pixels, and like code snippets, and it's just like, now some of it is some of it just some just like, what am I doing? Like, it's kind of, so you're saying, so okay, hello. The AdWords approach by using things like conversion metrics is like an alternative to like analytics code snippet stuff.
Yeah, basically, I'm of the opinion that all your goals should be in analytics, and then you can just import them into AdWords, and you don't need to worry about conversion snippets on pages.
Great.
That's ideal. There are certain situations, like to track clicks. If you like, I want to know how many people viewed this video, how many people clicked this research paper. That you can't do for the most part in goals. That's like Google Tag Manager, and that does involve code, and it's a lot more involved. So there's definitely layers in terms of tracking, but the high level stuff like did they donate, did they sign up for email, goals is suggested instead of doing code snippets. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Just trying to see how we're doing for time here. All right. And the other option for campaigns is maybe campaigns per audience. So we work with a national advocacy organization that works around lowering people's taxes, and their structure is all per province, right? It's Alberta, BC, Quebec, Ontario, whatever it is, because that's where you do the targeting. So that way we can set up targeting, so only in Alberta. So if you're a national organization but have chapters or something like that, this maybe is a better approach. Otherwise, you end up kind of duplicating campaigns. So you'll have donate and then maybe, donate Quebec, which you could do. It's extra effort, and then the more campaigns that you have, the more things can get messy and go wrong. But this is a way to structure your campaign is specifically to audience as well. Kind of mentioned this, traffic is great, but conversions are better. We talked about thank you pages. I think it's really important. For user experience, when someone completes a form, to get onto a nice form that says, thank you for signing up, here's what you can expect, or here's extra actions. It's useful on the user experience, but it's also useful on the tracking side. And increasingly, we've had a little success, but next after our kind of research friends have had a lot of success with soft asks for donations after people sign up for email. It sounds counterintuitive, but actually once people take one action, you know, that kind of mountain of micro yeses, once people take one action, they're actually more likely to take a second action. So one of the best things that you can do when people take an action is kind of feed the beast, right? Give them another action to take. Or if they sign up for email them right away and say, thank you for signing up, here's where you can learn more about us. And you can even ask for a donation within those first 30 days. It sounds counterintuitive, right? They just signed up, let's leave them alone. That's the worst thing you can do when someone shows engagement or connection with you. This is one of the weird kind of Google grant strategies is normally you don't want to pay for words that don't really relate or aren't super high value. But with Google, you have the $10,000 each month, whether you spend it or not. It's gone. It doesn't carry over. So if you only spend $4,000, next month you've got $10,000 again. It's not like you have $16,000 or something like that. So our general strategy is start broad, have a lot of keywords, weird keywords, longer form keywords, and try to maximize the spend and look at what people are actually clicking, because you can uncover some interesting keywords that you would never think of that are actually really valuable. Or once you get up to broad, then you can start maybe saying, oh, people in Ontario are way more valuable than people in BC. Let's remove people in BC. And you can kind of optimize down. That's much preferred, starting with data to optimize down, than kind of $100 and trying to optimize up. That's actually really tough to do. So I will say not every organization can or should try to spend the $10,000. Like if we work with churches, it's really hard for churches to spend $10,000 because they're hyper local. Sorry? Per month, $10,000 per month, yeah. Yeah, so if you max it out, you should be able to get like 6,000 visitors from just this program alone, which is, for a lot of organizations, it's a lot of traffic for small and medium-sized organizations. Yeah?
We have a question from a webinar participant. What are your thoughts on dynamic search ads?
Oh, that's starting to get beyond me. I like the idea of dynamic search ads. So dynamic search ads can pull content into landing pages. Right, so if I search, say for education, and I click that ad, I can go to a landing page that will switch the word, maybe like donate to education. That's one of the, I don't know if they're talking about dynamic on the landing page side or not.
Google Dynamic Search.
Yeah.
Google Dynamic Search ads.
Yeah, that's probably getting beyond my nerdery level. I have to talk to a specialist. But the idea of dynamic content, I'm a big fan of. It's just more relevant to what the person's searching for. And what the dynamic search content then means is you don't have to create like 100 landing pages, right? So it's like, this is education, it goes here. This is, water, it goes here. And so you're managing like landing pages. If done right, it's one landing page and it's dynamic based on search results. I think it's great. Go ahead.
Unrelated, but does Google actually tell you, does Google actually tell you what people click on? And I ask you that because we had a Google search tool on our website, and it doesn't tell you what people search for. It showed like 4 words, and that's impossible on our website. But anyway, for these paid ads, so-called, I mean, it's nonprofit, they give you the money, but do they actually tell you exactly what people clicked on?
Not necessarily, and not by default. So most of the time you'll have to use different plugins, tools like Hotjar or things like this that actually look at what people click on your site, and then you can filter those by traffic source.
I meant for the ads. Like if I have 100 words and I got users, but I don't know what words popped up, Like, I don't know what they're searching, right? Like, I'm
Oh.
doing my campaign.
Yeah,
Do they
yeah.
tell me in the campaign end of it, will they tell me
Yeah,
what
in the
people
back.
clicked on?
Yeah, in the back end, you'll see search terms and keywords, and it'll have all the metrics: clicks, click-through rate, impressions, bounce rate, all that stuff.
Okay.
Per keyword, per ad, per campaign, per ad group, all that information. Like you can get real into the weeds, but
Okay.
that information does exist in the back end of
Okay.
AdWords.
Thanks.
I think that's what you're asking.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to fast forward here a little bit, but the idea of spend, learn what's going on, optimize, and repeat. Again, if you only have a couple hours, this approach maybe isn't great. If you only have a couple hours, there's nothing wrong with spending $500 a month. It's better than nothing. And then quickly on the ads. Now this is where you would take that offer, right? Here's the offer where you're showing value. And the difference for ads in Google is you're making sure the offer is relevant to the keyword or search term. So if your offer is something about research, you wouldn't show a research ad if someone's looking to be a volunteer, right? Pretty simple and basic. Some kind of tips or best practices to use capitalization throughout. Punctuation, some people like to do like odd punctuation because it stands out more. A new trend is to use things in parentheses because it looks different when people are searching. So there's a bunch of like little things, but the big thing is making sure you make a clear offer tied to what people are searching for. They also have site link extensions. This is relatively new. What's useful for these, you can set them at the campaign level, is a lot of search volume is not around donation. Right? Very few people are searching to donate and specifically donate to your cause, but they are searching for content or ways to get involved. And so you can add these little site links and you have the chance that they can click on an action that kind of you want them to take. Right? So you can show an ad based on what they search, but you can provide an opportunity. This is good for events. If you have a gala or something like that, it's normally hard to use AdWords for, but you can promote a time-sensitive event in a site link extension. That's a pretty good strategy as well. We've talked a bit about landing pages. Should be focused on one action, similar content, one action, one page. And then email. We spend a lot of time focusing on how do we get people to sign up for emails from traffic, because then we can start communicating to them, we can build a relationship, we can provide value, we can give offers. So a couple tips on getting emails. Consider pop-ups. If done right, I think they're great. If done wrong, they're super annoying. So some pop-ups, like if people are reading 60% down a page for a blog or research, you can come up and say, would you like to sign up for email? Or that one on the left is when people are about to leave. So like before you go, things like that. It should be easy to find your email sign-up page. Normally we bury it, in the footer section, way in the bottom, or maybe a tiny little link up top. If you really want to collect emails, you should have it more prominently. You should also have it on a dedicated email page. And welcome emails, about 2/3 of organizations don't do welcome emails or send an email in the first 30 days after someone signs up, which is pretty atrocious. So at the very least, have some email that goes out saying, thanks for signing up for emails. If not, a full 3, 4, 5, 6-part welcome series. All right, I'm going to pause there because I think we're at a break point. So let's get some coffee, get some water, and then we'll jump back into it.
It's about a 10-minute break.
This is great, yeah. Okay, is everyone awake? It's kind of warm. Is this going all right? Yes. So. All right. I'm running behind, so I really want to get to the donation page stuff because it'll be fun. Get to rip up some donation pages in a friendly way. So I'm going to go really fast through this, all right? And if we can circle back for questions. But in our gardening analogy, right, the search is the lawnmower, so it's done the big bulk of the work. Facebook ads is the weed whacker. So Facebook posts or ads, weed whacker. You can get more fine-tuned, you can get more precise, more targeted to kind of get around the hedges, things like that. We've, again, looked at a bunch of different traffic sources and things like that, and Facebook is always the #1 social channel for engagement and donations. Every single time we do an analysis. So we do almost all of our social work on Facebook. Some organizations are kind of unique and different, but again, for us and our clients, when we look at data, it's almost always Facebook. And then we've tried like display ads and different forms of advertising, and almost every time Facebook ads have shown to be the most valuable, cost-effective, and highly targeted. I highly recommend this book, Turning Likes into Donors. It's a free ebook from Next After, but it kind of walks out, value proposition, how to set things up with the right links and codes. It kind of really walks you through. This is what we do. We follow this exact process. They're building a 2-day class just on Facebook ads, which should be out next year. It's really cool. So I'll go fast and just say read this book because it's great, and it's free. So a lot of the same concepts, right, that we used for ads or emails, which is next. It's the same thing. So you create your offer just in a different format. I will give you, we're going to start introducing some quizzes here. So on the first ad, this was it. Second ad, this was it. Which ad? Number 1 or number 2? Who thinks number 1 did better? Number 2? Y'all are wrong. This is probably the number 1 misconception of fundraisers and marketers, that they think shorter is better. And it's almost always the opposite. When we get into donation pages, you'll see some more examples. Hopefully you get those quizzes right. Our best performing Facebook ads, longer form. This isn't our test, so a lot of the research here is Next After. Again, it's our super smart Texas friend. We'll have some of our own tests in here as well. But longer form almost always outperforms shorter form. It's a test worth running, but it'll probably come back the same way. Sorry, say that again? That was Facebook specific, but in general, longer emails, longer donation pages, longer Facebook ads, longer everything typically. And again, it's because you have to communicate more value throughout the process. Yeah? Good call.
Longer, I don't know. I'm part of the TLDR, If it's too long, get it on my face. So I voted for the shorter one, but you're saying longer ads equals better response. Is that because of the demographic of senior, sort of 55 plus? I mean, is that what we're talking about?
Could be. So
how do we understand that longer is better?
Yeah.
Is it just for some people?
So test it. Right? So that's the only answer, especially when we get into optimization. I'll tell you based on our research, what we believe, what I found, but the answer is always test it for you. But there's a lot of tests across multiple organizations that have proven longer is better. So it's definitely worth testing. And it also does depend on the ad. So if you show a shorter ad to someone who knows you, like a retargeting ad, that could be better. They know you, they're just trying to get through the process. Whereas if someone who's new, a longer ad is better. Why should they care? Why should they get involved? So there's absolutely context, but the point being, we almost always default to what you did. It's too long, I won't read it. So then we all write short stuff. Meanwhile, your donors probably want long stuff. So at the very least, it's worth testing.
Well, it wasn't that long, so is there maximum length that you recommend?
Nope. So like we've done like 3-paragraph Facebook ads that outperform something like this. Now, not necessarily on clicks, but on conversions, right? People will click the short thing, but they maybe won't go through a donation process. Our goal isn't clicks, our goal is donations. So if someone will engage and read a longer post and go all the way through and donate, that's a much better usage of our advertising dollars. So there are different forms, but again, we're talking about donations and fundraising.
Is that just because they have to engage the actual post to see the rest of the content?
That's part of it. They take a small action and they show engagement, but more so it's communicating value, right? If you just have a quick short statement like, get our news or make a donation today, someone needs to come into that ad with pre-motivated, they have to have motivation already for your cause. Whereas if you have a good image and you have a couple paragraphs, you can kind of foster motivation so they go, oh, that is interesting to donate to. So the overarching principle is don't trust your instinct because you're often wrong, and test it. So those are 2 things. Offer consistency, again, it's the same principle whether it's an email or an ad. The thing that I really like about Facebook ads, or we find, is you can do a lot of different forms of specific targeting. These are kind of our 7 kind of default audiences that we'll use. So email list, you can upload your email list. It'll match it on Facebook. You can show ads to people who are on your email list. You can build a lookalike audience, so Facebook will say, here's people who are similar to your email list. Website visitors, if you install a pixel on your site, you can show ads to people who have visited your site. Same thing, you can build a lookalike off of it. Your Facebook page, so who likes your page, and a lookalike off those people. And then you can just do detailed keyword targeting. So people who live in BC, who like to volunteer, who social service, churchgoers, whatever, the targeting fits your demographic. But it's pretty highly targeted, which is nice to track and understand as well. One of the other things for donations, in particular, remove mobile. While donations are going up for mobile, it's still a much better experience for people when they're on desktop to give, especially if your donation page isn't so good on mobile. So if you're spending money focused on donations and they're pointing on mobile, you could be wasting a decent amount of money. So we almost always restrict to desktop and newsfeed.
Like that's just for social, right? Like that's just for like the social component.
Sorry?
Is that just for the social component, or like that's specific to social, but it's not like in general?
Yeah, so when you're starting to pay for money, or like you're paying your own money,
Yeah.
the first optimization is remove mobile for donations. Generally. Again, it depends on your donation form. If you got a really good donation form, then it's fine. Just most donation forms are not great, right? You gotta thumb in a bunch of things, you gotta put in your credit card, maybe you're on the bus. So it just often leads to a bunch of wasted money that you should reallocate to desktop.
Hey, Brady, can you repeat questions?
Oh, sorry, yeah, the question was, does that only relate to social as opposed to just in general? The last one is email. We've talked a lot about getting emails. This is its own, 2-day course as well. But it is the highest value in terms of average gift and conversion is emails almost all the time. Again, I'm speaking somewhat in generalities, but it's pretty common across. This is one example where we do the analysis and see that email is the highest average gift. So in that, long metaphor, email is the shears. So now you're getting real fine. In theory, you know exactly who you're talking to, what their giving history is, what they care about, and you can be very personal and very specific to them. Subject lines, hugely important. I won't spend a lot of time on those. Design, keep it simple, focused, one action. Got another quiz here for you. Just spoiler alert. Well, let's try this anyways. Designed email. Dead plain email. Who thinks the designed email? Yeah, because you guys saw it. Plain email helped increase donations 46%. We ran this test ourselves, and for almost every client, the plain email outperforms the designed email when it comes to donations. The big thing is when people get an overly designed email, they feel like they're getting marketed to as opposed to engaged with, right? So there are definite examples of people and times to use beautifully designed emails, and we'll use those for like newsletters and things like that. And again, generally speaking, this is a test that Next After's proven probably 30 times, and we've proven probably half a dozen. It's definitely worth testing. Let's see if it works for you. The idea again is fundraising is about connection and emotion, and so if it's personal and stripped down, it feels like it's more connected and personal. All right, now we get into some reduction of friction and donation pages. So just a reminder, here's our conversion, right? Motivation, clarity, incentive is greater than friction minus anxiety, and people will donate. We talked about kind of simplified websites. I was talking with Elaine, trying to simplify sites so you don't have tons of content, tons of action, more focused pages. All right, so 7 types of donation page friction. We'll go through these, and then this is some of what we'll do when we optimize these pages. So the first one is field number, so just tons of fields, too many fields, right? Too much information is required, it's too much for donors to fill out. That's one form of donation friction. Another one is field layout. So if everything is title, and it's narrow, and it's really long, a donor can hit the page and go, oh, this looks like a lot of information here. I don't think I'm going to do this. So if you lay things out using horizontal space, it looks like it's less information. Or you can do contextual, so once they get to billing, then it expands, things like that. But field layout is a form of friction on donation pages. Decision friction is a form of friction on donation pages. This is where you're asking people to make a lot of choices. What fund do you want to designate this to, right? That's more of like an accounting and finance need often, right? We've got our accounting buckets. Which of our accounting buckets would you like to install your payment into? Whereas a lot of donors don't know what the buckets are, or what the funds even are in the first place. So you're asking them to make a decision on something they don't know. If you do have funds, it's recommended to like default area of greatest need or something like that, and maybe offer like 3. We had one client, we're working them down, they had 98 designations. So you click donate, you click this, and like, what is a donor supposed to do, right? Decision friction is one of them. Confusion friction, that's mainly like conflicting calls to action. So you're on a donate page, but yet you want me to sign up for email, maybe I can share on social media, maybe I can learn more about stories, like what is it that you want me to do here? There's so many different things going on. It's causing me confusion friction. Error friction, so this is when you forget a field, but it doesn't tell you, or doesn't tell you easily, or you go all the way to the end and then it's like, oh, just kidding, you made a mistake, you have to go back to the beginning. It's very frustrating to have error friction. And registration friction, basically if you have a donation system that requires registration, it's a bad donation tool. Almost full stop. Very few donors actually even use the login. It seems nice they can log in and manage their tax receipts, but they're just going to call you and say, I lost my tax receipt anyways. There are reasons to use login, like members areas, gated content. I'm not saying all registrations, but if you use a registration system as your main donation, it's probably bad. And then device friction, so just things not being optimized for mobile. Pinch and zoom, looking small, things like that. Those are the 7 kind of main forms of donation page friction. All right, now we're going to get into some optimization. So first, I'm sorry, but I'm not that sorry. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't know 90% of this stuff until I was forced to learn it, and my career just took me to a way where I have learned this stuff. I don't necessarily think that you should know this stuff, and so some of the things I'll say will be harsh. It's not your fault, maybe. And most of my scorn is for tools. I told someone else that you just have a crappy tool. Probably the tool that you're using is the biggest limiter to having a great donation experience. And then also I have a lot of scorn for consultants and agencies who build websites or consult but actually don't do a good job of helping with donations. There's a lot of great web agencies who build great websites but do not know how to process donations well and properly, in my opinion. I'm not trying to brag, and I definitely don't know anything, but there's a difference between selling beer on a fancy website and processing donations. There really, really is. So this optimization is based on a whole bunch of things, but some of the resources, Next After, again, learned so much from their tests and resources. They've also produced a book called The Online Scorecard. So they looked at 150 organizations, they made donations and tracked them and analyzed all the emails and analyzed the flow. This study top right did the same thing with 96 charities here in Canada, Christian charities, analyzed all their donation flows and pages. Then us at Shift, me at Chimp, processed thousands and thousands of donations. And I've just been doing this my whole career. And so I've picked up a lot of tidbits and knowledge here and there. So this is what this stuff is based on. And again, the principle is, I'm going to talk about all of the things that I know, but fundamentally, you test it. Like some things don't need to be tested. Like should we have 37 links on our donate page? No, you don't need to test that. But there are some things that you should be testing. Did you have a question? No. So a couple testing principles. In theory, you need 1,000 in each group, like bare minimum. It's going to be really hard to get a significant test if you have less than 1,000. So that means 1,000 web visits on just this page and just that page. Same thing for email and direct mail. It should be more like 5,000. Test the right metric. If your goal is donations, then you should not care about open rates. You should not necessarily care about click rates. It's about donation conversion rates. Because often the email that converts best might have a lower open, might have a lower click, but it has higher donations. So test the right metric, focus on conversion. Test in the same time frame. You can't say, oh, we did this last spring, we're going to do this spring, this worked better. That's a totally flawed test. You need to test in the same season to really get insights on what's going on. A lot can change in a year. Comparing year over year is actually really tough in a testing scenario. There's two different forms of testing too. So there's radical, where it's like, here's our current donation page, we throw it in the trash and we totally rebuild a new donation page. That's a radical test, right? Where it's totally different. You change tons of variables and you're basically saying, our old page sucks, our new page hopefully is good. Are we right? Versus incremental, which will be like, you'll test a headline, you'll test just an image, you'll test just a field number. Those are incremental tests. So normally what we'll do is we'll start with a radical test, because most of the time the starting point is not great. So we'll radically redesign it, and then from there we'll do incremental tests, right? Validate tests. Next after has a tool to validate tests. It's getting easier to do tests. Again, if all your analytics.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. When you're talking about, so you were talking about the donor conversion rate and the emails and not looking at open rates. But do you ever look at the open rates to see like, okay, let's go back and let's only re-blast the people who open but haven't donated
Sure.
versus re-blasting everyone? Do you like look at that and do you
Yeah, that's more of a strategy than a test though, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
should be testing, is this email better than this email based on donations? But sending emails again to people who didn't open the other email is a great idea. You should do it almost all the time. Testing is getting easier. Google Optimize. You don't need to be a code person to change a word on your donation page, and you can run tests if you're set up right in Google Analytics. I can't stress that so much. Things like e-commerce integration, at the very least goals, you need to know where donations are coming from to run any sort of test. If you don't have it, you can't test for the most part. There are some tools like Unbounce and landing page tools built for testing, but it's best if you can do it within Google Analytics on your own. And a culture of testing, I think, is more important than, we had 18 statistically significant tests in the last year. Thinking about, maybe I don't know what's best, let's be always trying to figure out what our donors are actually doing. That mindset is so important, and it's more important than actual testing. So for these optimizations, I didn't complete the whole donation. I don't have that much money. So I didn't go through to the thank you page or monitor confirmation emails. I didn't test on mobile. It's hard to do screen grabs and through the whole process. Also, all pages should be designed or optimized for conversion. Even if you have this real ugly page, you can still optimize it for conversion. And I didn't care a lick about what your tool limitations were or not. I'm sympathetic, but at the same time, I don't care. All right, so here we go. Branch Out Foundation. Are they here? Oh, maybe not. They're getting off a little easy here. All right, so we're starting out here. I'll go through a few, and then as we go, I'm sure you'll be able to start picking them out. So right off the hop, I'm already on a donate page. I do not need a donate button, and I'm ready to donate. I do not want to look at other content. Remove top-level navigation. Secondly, on this one, why donate? That's a great question, right? That's what we're trying to answer. Why should I give to you compared to another organization or not at all? We rely on your donations to fund groundbreaking neurocam research. Does that sound like you know what neurocam research is as a person? Now again, they're donors, more sophisticated, maybe they know this. We rely on your donations to fund neurocam research is the first statement on the website. It's not very inspiring, right? They're trying to get clarity, but it sounds like a bunch of people who really know what they're talking about sat in a room and came up with this copy. Then they start getting into some better stuff. To date, we've raised money, but then they get into peer review, science, innovative technologies, non-pharmaceutical approaches, hearing, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, the progress of grant recipients, 20% of the world's population impacted by neurological disorders. Very little about what I, as a donor, can do or how I will know, right? It's very much about big numbers, big words, hard to understand. So once you choose, you go through the steps, you get to PayPal, I click donate, but oh no, I forgot to fill in a form field, so I have to go all the way back to the start. It says, one error occurred, phone number. So at least it tells me what error I made, so that's good. It's not good if you say error but don't give any information. So I had to go back, put in my phone number. It would have been best if it tells me right when I don't put in, it shouldn't let me go past that step, right? As soon as you go past that form, it should say, this can't be blank, or please fill this out. But then you get to the end of the donation process, and then you get into PayPal. Linking out to a third-party service provider will always diminish your conversion rate. It's not worth testing. You want to keep the donation and the experience on your own site as much as possibly can. Luckily, PayPal is trusted. It's not some weird, random processing tool. PayPal is very trusted. They do a okay job at processing money, but what you lose here is, I see Branch Out Foundation, but that's it, right? It's secure, so I can trust that my money will, but what's my donation going to do? Who's this going to help? All that is gone, right? Now it's just give us your money, which isn't the worst thing, but linking out is tough. So I'm going to do another quiz here. Hopefully I don't spoil it with this clicker. Here's option 1. Here's option 2. Which one do you think raises more money? Option 1. Option 2. Option 2 at a 302% increase in donations. 302%. That's not insignificant, right? This is on significant volume too. Whether you agree with them or not, and I personally do not like all their policies, the Heritage Foundation is a massive organization in the US. This is not small volume, a 302% increase. So here's why, or one of the main reasons why. The page structure. You read it, you start going down through payment options, then you jump up over to the copy, you see this guy's face, you go back down through the copy and see the value. Now I hop back over. Your iPath is doing a lot of work here just to process a donation. Whereas the best, again, generally speaking, is straight down. Just make it easy on the eye to just read, fill out my form, boom, I'm done. The more effort you make eyes and brains and fingers do, the less chance you have of donations. I also think that this plays into so this is what they would say is a radical redesign. And so it's not just iPath. You'll notice there's way more copy, right? There's way more discussion and value proposition again versus just, kind of more visually based. But the proper iPath here should be straight down if you can. Yeah?
Are they donating to the crabby looking one because it looks so crabby?
There could be an element of that, like the direct mail world. I think a common thing though is doesn't matter really how it looks as much as what they're getting communicated, right? You don't like this, do you? I would love for you to run a test longer and plain and then come back. And we could very well be wrong, but it's definitely worth testing. So here again, here's part of the problem. Left, down, up, down, back, over, and back down. So ideally it would be more linear and all the way down. All right, Christian Horizons?
Yay.
Yeah, you're here.
I'm ready to video.
You're here, all right. I was going to say, I've got good news and bad news, but I don't know if I have a lot of good news.
It's okay, that's why I want.
All right, so can anyone start me off here? It's similar. Anyone want? Headers and links. There are a lot. Look at all the little things you can click to move away from this page, huh? Tons and tons. I think I counted there was 13 or something like that. There's a lot. So then we get into this value proposition. Give to where needed most. Not super inspiring. It's not specific or concrete. Not really tangible. Your donation will help advance our ministry work serving persons with exceptional needs in Canada and worldwide. It's pretty vague. I don't know. I think exceptional needs is trying to be very politically correct to the people that you're serving, which is great to be politically correct. It often means it's hard to understand. Are these like fantastic athletes? Like who are we talking about being exceptional? Canada and worldwide, it's all over the place. You don't really know. So combination, give where needed most, helping ministry, like this could be a lot of different things, right? So again, hopefully you come in with some context from an email or an ad to know, but if you just hit the donate page, it's not entirely clear what you're doing. So once we start seeing a few patterns, I'm going to try to call it out. But the biggest thing that you can do if you have embedded widgets, embedded forms, whatever your tool is, just put it in a different template. That's the easiest way to get rid of top navigation and footer navigation. If you can't, that sucks for you, but it's one of the easiest things you can do to optimize a donation page is just remove the distractions. All right, so then once you click donate, they have this little pop-up thing. So the good side is it reiterates the message. The downside is, the message isn't great. But this is nice to keep. So if this was more like, support, again, more specifically, and then reiterate it, that's good. This is conflicting. I'm in the camp of suggested donations. I think you should give people 25, 50, 100, 250, whatever it is, on buttons that people click. There are some studies with higher value donors where you're leaving the field blank. They'll actually give a lot more. So sometimes for our lower level donors, we'll give them buttons, and higher level donors will say, whatever you want, sir or madam. I'm not saying buttons that are in suggested donations are a hill to die on, but we're in the camp of buttons. So there you go. Proceed to payment. Nothing like giving your payment to that charity. It just makes you feel so good. And then the form isn't bad. So it's a little crammed because it's also in the same size widget. So it's kind of tightly compacted. But it's not the worst form in the world. Ideally, similar to the Nation Builder example, when it's kind of crammed, they did it in steps. That would be better, so that you do this one, click next, flips to the next thing, because this is a lot of crammed information, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And then you've got this review gift, which is kind of like confirm your purchase. Generally, it's just confusing and an extra button that they can take them back. I did it, and it was confusing. Back to cart, so that's the other thing, like eTapestry we were talking about. A lot of early donation processing tools were just e-commerce, so they're checkout or cart based, right? I want this, I want this, I want this, and checkout. That's bad for a donation experience typically, unless you have a gift catalog. That's like the only use. Otherwise, the language is off. It's got weird steps. So if you're on a checkout e-system, it's probably not great. So, not great, not the end of the world, but wait. If you keep going down this donation page, this is below. More content section, boom, ding, 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 more info, ding, 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 ding. There were 37 links and buttons on this donation page. 2 led to a donation. So you can have an information page on read more about us and why you should give and reports and other ways to give. But that's a separate page than your donation page. Your donation page is complete your donation and get out of their way. So that was way too long. Like, the page isn't bad, but you should have a separate page which is just about donation, right? More value proposition, more donation. Raising the roof. It's taping these things. It's like a roast. All right, raising the roof. Oh, I mentioned this with some other clients, but I should mention it to you. Again, I know it's a tool limitation, but I don't care. This is not great for raise the roof, right? Gift tool, donations, donate ID. It's not a friendly URL for people. Doesn't build trust, right? Man, this thing jumped ahead again. So same thing. Holy smokes! I'm wrecking your video over there. Sorry. There we go. You've got all this additional navigation. That pretty much happens on every page. So I'll keep mentioning it, but it'll get old. You have this donation loop, right? I'm on a donate page. If you click that button, you come back to this page. So it's like Inception, or you just like levels of the same thing. Donate now. Decent headline. Not very inspirational though. Secure donations. Thank you for your generous support. Please provide the requested information so we can process your donation. Please select a gift. Like, there's no inspiring copy. I don't know what my donation will do. I don't know how it will help, who it will help. I don't know any of that stuff. So not really talking to me like a human who's about to make you a donation, right? It's again, a lot of our language is complete payments, which is not inspiring or make donors feel great.
So what would you say instead?
Instead of what?
Complete payment.
Donate?
Donate now.
Yeah, I mean, in the language here, I have something like you build houses? Is that it? No? What do you do?
Well, we're a funder for other organizations that would provide services.
Okay, so I'd have something about donate now to provide services and homes or something like that at first. But the language should be more, instead of payment, it should be more like donation, yeah, generally. Move forward here. So it's got the cool sticky navigation bar which scrolls down, which is normally okay, but not on a donation page because that confusion link distraction now stays with you the more you scroll down the page. So even if you can turn the sticky nav off this page, that'd be good. Then this is I'm of two minds. One, talking more about donors and addressing questions who are interested in a monthly gift. How do I process? What will it do? It's not bad. If someone's really motivated to make a donation and they've started it, they'll scroll down past this. Not for me, they'll keep going, right? So providing some more context of information is good. This is probably too much real estate on a donation page. You could maybe have one line and then more information at the end or on the next page. But this is a lot of copy talking about with this plan, you do this, tax receipts, it's a lot of information while they're still not completing their donation yet. So if you really wanted monthly donations, we suggest having a monthly donation page when you ask specifically, and this is part of the value proposition. So you've got a one-time only page, a monthly page, and then you've got a kind of general one. So this is probably too much, but the idea is not that bad. Then you get into the page itself. We're going to do another quiz here. So here's option 1. Here's option 2. I don't even know if you can tell the difference. It's this. Who thinks option 1 raise more money? Oh, sorry. It's this one field here. Cell phone. Sorry, it says cell phone. So option 1, no phone. Option 2, with phone. Option 1, with phone or without phone. Raise more money. Option 2, with phone. Decrease 42%. And if you carry it through, it's actually 50% revenue. So the conversion rate was down 42.6%, but the donation amount was actually more like 50%. So, somewhat controversial, we say remove the phone field completely. Now, if you have an important program where you have to phone people and a telethon or conversion to monthly, if there's a reason, a specific reason that's value add to the donor in particular or you, then you can think about collecting phone. But just collecting it because we might need it one day is not worth it. In our opinion, we're focused on how do you raise more money online today, solve one problem at a time. If you need to get their phone number, you can have them complete a survey, you can try other ways to get a phone number. But asking for it in advance is tough. And the biggest reason is they don't know what you're going to do with their phone number. They think you're going to call me, you're going to ask me for more money, you're going to spam me. I don't know what you're going to do with my number. So if you are asking for a phone number, we'd suggest having a line of saying, what are you going to do with it, right? We want to call you and say thanks. I'm not exactly, we want to call and get you to give monthly. Like, it's kind of tough because the reason why you want the phone number is generally to upsell or convert or something like that. But try to communicate to limit their anxiety about what you're going to do with their phone number if you require their phone number. But as a general rule, we get rid of it completely. If you add it, have it be optional and not required, or only required if you absolutely must and have really, really good rationale. So we would say at least turn that into optional, but maybe even remove it. And then, I don't know if you can see the bottom of the screen, but you have, if you would like to sign up for e-newsletters, click here, which puts you into a MailChimp. But I just gave you my email. So why are you asking me to also give your email here? And even if you did, I'm in the middle of a donation. You don't want to go get my email from over there. Let me finish my donation. So let me get into cardholder information. Here again though, I would like to receive email updates. You already asked me for this. What's going on? This question comes from a good place. I think it's wrong. Interesting to know who you are, why you gave, etc. One, it causes anxiety to a donor perhaps. I don't know, why did I give? Where did I come from? I don't know what's going on. Two, it's unreliable data. A donor will tell you, oh, I gave because of magazine. How can you validate that, right? Maybe they came from a Facebook ad, but they thought it was this. It's so hard to process that information. And since it's not standardized, you can't run any analysis off this, right? It will be a comments field in a spreadsheet somewhere that will never get looked at or used, for the most part. I can almost guarantee you. So I'd say just don't ask it, or if you really want that information, have it on a confirmation page. Thank you so much for your donation. You're helping provide services in homes, or whatever that statement is. We'd love to hear more about why you gave today. Then fill it out, not now. And then you kind of ask again, was this a result of something you received in the mail? Tracking the value of online giving from mail, good. Making everyone go through this process and having yes by default, not good. The best way to track donations from mail is a separate URL. So when you send the direct mail piece out, you'll have raisingtheroof.ca/campaign name. And the only people who can get to that campaign are people who come from your direct mail appeal. That's the best way to prove value of direct mail. Not everyone's going to go. Some people might go direct mail and just type it into Google and go down the regular form. But again, asking people this, it's unreliable and it's adding more friction. And then below, you run into this. Who cares about gift tool? This is good. So security marks, people need to know that their donation is secure. It's a big fear for donors. Ideally, this would be up a little bit higher before they kind of complete donation, go all the way down. And then this stuff, you could buy a toque. You could sign up for email again, in case you missed the first three. You could go down here. And then same thing, here we would say, the charity number is great, phone number is great, email, the address is great, in case people go to donate and they write a check. But otherwise, information, no. And who cares about eccentrics, again. Don't give credit to your vendors and service providers, especially if they're not good. I don't know why they force themselves on your pages, but it's not helping you or your donors necessarily. The security mark's great, but not the vendor stuff. You all right? Good, all right. Fred Victor?
Just a quick
Oh,
question
question.
about the email sign up. I understand not putting it on the donate page, but like if you did a thank you page, I know you've already got their email, but now we've got all this new stuff about having proof willing to be signed up for emails and all that. So is just doing the donate page enough, or do we need a separate?
Yeah, so the question was, do we need a separate page to capture emails, or how do we kind of capture emails in the donation process? And I will tell you my answer. CASEL does not apply to fundraising. CASEL applies to commercial electronic messaging. So if you are soliciting for services, or sales, or tickets, maybe that falls under CASEL, but newsletters, updates, anything around fundraising does not fall under spam law. You do not need to even ask for specific opt-in. They fill in their email, they're on your list. Right? It's a huge misconception, and people get really scared. We've looked at lawyers, we've talked to people, that's our stance. Now there are some organizations that maybe do advocacy or do sales and stuff, maybe they would apply to CASEL, but I'd say 90% of people that are worried about CASEL, it doesn't apply to them. So we'd say don't even give people an opt-in, but you need to communicate to them quickly. Thank you for your donation, you'll receive emails and updates about your impact, you can unsubscribe anytime. There's elements of CASEL that you absolutely have to follow. People can unsubscribe easily and freely, things like that. So the donation flow is different than if someone just signs up for an email. They have to opt in from that. You can't just take a bunch of random sources and business cards and throw them on your list. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in really quickly. And you're right, so for CASEL, because this is not the topic for today, just very quickly, it has to be fundraising only. So if you do fundraising and events, that's a commercial message. It has to be donate only. We have actually a webinar and more details. Like, again, not trying to scare anyone in this room, but do be very careful. Like, it needs to be fundraising only. Don't put more messages in there.
Yeah, I did read we can discuss it. I did read your article, and our legal view would disagree. Yeah, so the biggest thing is if you're fundraising, you're not selling services. If it's a fundraising event, you can sell tickets, in our opinion. Anyways, CASEL probably doesn't apply to what you're thinking about.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Fred Victor, someone here? Yeah, you're here. All right. So Fred Victor, this is the donate page. I think we have a quiz. Option 1. Option 2. Who thinks option 1, raise more money? Everyone's learning the game. Option 2, 150% increase in donations. The biggest thing, again, is this. Value proposition. Why should I give to you as opposed to someone else or not at all? What is my donation going to do today? Why are you trustworthy? An image alone can't satisfy that for most donors. And if they are already motivated, they can scroll 2 paragraphs to complete the thing that they came here to do. What was the question?
I actually have a comment, and I think that to your question, I normally just want to see the fewest words also. However, if I'm going to donate somewhere, it's very different than if I'm buying a computer and I know the make and model and I'm just going to a bunch of websites and I don't need a lot of blurbies. I just want the clean form, give me the one that's the best price or whatever. But donate, who are you? What's this about? So it's not the same when you're making another purchase is what I'm saying. I think it's unique.
Yeah, I think the key thing that you said there, and similar to the comment before, is I.
Yeah.
You are one of the worst feedback loops to your own stuff. Do you know? Because you'll see this page and, I don't need that stuff. I know. I have no idea what you're doing, right? So try to take yourself out of it, and this is where testing is super useful. But again, a common thread amongst tests on Facebooks, emails, donation pages, direct mail, longer almost always outperforms better. On conversions. Maybe not clicks, maybe not readership. Yeah?
Just a quick comment. The navigation, removing the navigation menu, I would assume it also applies to the sidebar.
Like this stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those aren't clickable links. It's like the address if you want to send a check and stuff like that. So, I mean, we'd say that information should be maybe like down here, and so that you're not doing this I thing. But the principle here, the test was value prop versus non-value prop. So same thing, like our donation pages can absolutely be optimized. They're not perfect. These pages aren't perfect. So communicate more on your value and offer. And this is what I mean. Helping find people a place of purpose. It's kind of catchy. Not exactly 100% sure. I'm guessing it's like housing of some kind. Thank you for telling me which form I'm on. This is the Fred Victor donation form, right? It's automated from whatever form tool you're using. So basically, in here, like who's the human that I'm helping? What are your services that I'm doing? How will my donation be used? Again, if I don't have that and know coming in, it's going to be hard to get off this page. Some of the language here is also kind of, cold-ish. I'd say take the sharing off. Sharing is great on a post-donation page once someone's actually donated. So I think this is like a Convio page or maybe like Artez. Anyways, it's one of those tools that kind of have everything mashed in there in one. Login with Facebook is kind of unique. It can simplify the process for some people. It can complicate the process for some people if they're not logged in and things like that. But generally, I'm a fan of social logins to get information, if it happens well. This is the form layout again, right? So we'd say just put like address above it or on the side, and you can save a lot of space. You can stack first name, last name. You can have some of that. Neither phone field is required, which is good, but you're asking for both, which is maybe not great. Email address, and then per that kind of castle conversation, I'd say you don't need this. Again, maybe you do sales and services and would fall under some of the other stuff. Same thing with this. Depends, but you're asking people to make decisions. Allowing for anonymous donations is great. We'll do another quiz here. Option 1. Option 2. Who thinks option 1? And option 2. Oh, the suspense.
No.
Option 2, 46.3%. Two things. One, you've got these nice buttons versus crappy radio buttons. Radio buttons are brutal, especially on mobile. You're like tapping these little radio buttons. But also see these forms? Name, boom, 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 boom. Whereas this uses horizontal space in one flow, and the fields are bigger, so it feels easier to complete. Yeah?
Okay, Brady. One of the other webinars that I took, and I actually did a 4-part webinar series with another development officer, fundraiser who consults, and she indicated that collecting the phone number is important. We're a small organization, And the reason why she said to collect the phone number is because if our board members can actually contact the person to just call and say thank you, there's evidence to suggest that that person will become a returning donor.
Yeah.
So I know you're talking about removing it from that field, from the donation page. Well, how?
So two things.
Insight.
One, the consultant person's 100% correct. A board member or someone of your organization calling a donor within 3 days or time sensitive has been shown to increase the likelihood of them giving again, which is great. The argument that we would say is, one, if you're going to do that, cool, then field collecting it. The big thing is we're going to collect email because it's a default field. So we're going to collect email because we might, our phone because we might want it one day. If that's your stance, don't worry. If you're like, we're going to call people within 3 days, then it's more of an argument. I'd say still make it optional. If you make it required, a lot of people will, I don't know what you can do with my phone. So I'd say that's a good case, do optional. You may even want to say like, phone number, we'd love to call you and say thanks. I'm sure that would increase the likelihood of someone giving you their phone number. But the other thing we'd say is, I would rather have more donors with fewer phone numbers than fewer donors with phone numbers. That's my view in terms of how we think about communication, because we're high volume email. We send a lot of emails that are hopefully good and relevant. We can send a survey and get a phone number. So we have a strategy generally about turning emails into repeat donors. If you rely heavily on the phone for those things, then for sure you should acquire the phone number. All I'm saying is when you ask for a phone, fewer people will donate. So is it worth it? And in your case, it probably is. That's all. Did you have a question?
Well, I was going to ask about retention, but you said you have an email strategy to have retention. Whereas, yeah.
And I will say we try to take phone off, and almost all the time we get them to make it optional. They can't go all the way off phone, but we get them off it being required. So most people still use phone. And again, if you're going to use it, it's great. So some of that form friction, asking for phone twice could be a little problematic. Asking for email again. We've talked about Castle and email opt-ins. Payment information, again, using more form space could make that appear a little bit better. And this is good and bad. None of those are actually links. So you can't actually link away from the donate page. That's good, but it's very confusing because you think those are all links, right? So having the address is good. You should also have your registered charity number. There should be stuff on the page with a lockbox or 100% secure. You should have a phone number that they can contact you if they have problems. So there is some required information that you should put on there, just not a bunch of links out to different places. Mo. Mo and I had a chat a while back and talked about some of this stuff.
We had a question about processing PayPal without linking to the external PayPal site. Is that, so that's possible to do on a donation page so that a would-be donor wouldn't be taken off the page?
Correct, yeah. So PayPal has like an out-of-the-box, you click and you go to PayPal. They also have a merchant level account where you can use it just like Stripe or IATS, and it just plugs into your form and you wouldn't leave. So you can use PayPal just as a merchant processor. We don't recommend it. Our payment processor of note is Stripe. That's what we use for as much as we can. It's really flexible and easy to use. But you can use PayPal in that way. All right, so we're at Mo here. All right, so first thing, the image is good. It could be better because I don't know who these hockey players are. Is it a kid? Is it someone of color? Like, what's going on here? It just looks like a pickup game, right? So it's not inherently clear. I know your organization, so I know, but I don't know. I like this as a kind of short headline, and it's also part of the Squarespace kind of template that you're using. Ideally, you would have some more supporting copy as we get into it, but quick, your donation is giving hockey, easily understood, hashtag connects with a certain type of donor. You could even test one word, so here's a test we did, share versus give, and give increased by 23 or so %. We have a temptation when we ask for donations to just share hope or consider a contribution today, right? Like really kind of passive, but you're still asking for a donation. So flip and ask for a donation, right? It helps the donor know, what do you want me to do? Give, I will give, or give, I don't want to give. The share fluffy stuff generally doesn't work, all right? So all that to say, you could run a test with your title, like your donation is giving hockey, is like give hockey today. Like you could run a simple test on headlines. Headlines are great to test. This template, well, we'd say remove it. You're already on a donation page. This is good, except it's not year end, right? So adding some incentive or saying, hey, if you do this good thing, you'll also get money back on your taxes. That's a nice little incentive value add, but it's contextual, but out of context right now. Donate today, give new Canadians a chance to play hockey at no cost. Pretty good. The sub-copy, this is where the political correctness maybe is a little harder to understand. Giving new Canadian youth in high priority neighborhoods an opportunity to play hockey at no cost, while also learning. So it's just the term new Canadian youth in high priority neighborhoods. I translate that to being like new immigrants to Canada, maybe not citizens who are in low-income neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's basically what it is. So why would you not say that? Is it offensive to the people? If so, don't do it, but it's probably not the most accessible language for people trying to learn about your organization. I've said before, I'm in the suggested donation button. You can do that in Canada Helps. Canada Helps, by the way, is a really good, cheap tool to use. Its form's pretty good. You embed it in your own page. You've got some control. You can point to confirmation pages. So if you, Canada Helps. If you don't do your own custom thing or whatever, it's not a bad tool. It's the best kind of free donation form tool there is, I think.
It's not ultimately free. No.
Well, it just charges transaction fee.
The percentage of what is donated.
Yeah. But what's the alternative? I think it is. There's transaction costs in anything.
Yeah.
It costs to process a check, right?
So
You just don't know what the cost is. Canada Helps charges 4.9%. Is that what the question was? It's a little less if you do like ETF, wire transfer, or something like that.
Yeah, but they do all the tax receipting too.
They do all the tax receipting. I think it's absolutely worth 5% instead of trying to go PayPal and saving a few percent. I would much suggest Canada Helps. Give up a few percentage and make it on more donations and a better experience. We get real hung up on fees and transaction costs, which is counterproductive in a lot of ways, especially when we come to tools like this, right? We'll choose the cheapest tool. Meanwhile, donors are leaving our pages and we're losing money every single day. And we don't know it, but good thing we went with the cheap tool, right? I'm not saying that to you, I'm saying that generally. If you can, make it go fuller width, so not, again, that's a template thing. Prefix, do you really need prefix to know Mr. and Mrs.? Maybe you do, but you could remove that. This is cool, it's contextual. If you click it, then it expands, but if not, it stays short. It's a great way to shorten up forms. Canada Helps does it by default. So here's where you say, please provide us with your phone number, right? But if you could have that instead of your response here, something like, we'd love to call you and say thanks, something like that could help. But it is optional, which is good. And then complete donation, and then Canada Helps has its own stuff that you have to do. So, how are we doing for time? I have like a bunch more of these, but it's starting to get repetitive.
So like maybe 2 more.
All right, Royal Ontario Museum. Yeah, all right. So first off, again, not the best URL. ROM. I didn't know right off the start that's like your acronym. That's what you go by. So obviously, if it was like Royal Ontario Museum or something, it would be a little better. Not the end of the world. It's a tool restriction. This is good. So if you're on their site, their logo looks the same. It's roughly the same size. You come to this page, it's pretty clear, consistent. Like, oh, this is still Royal Ontario, even though we linked out to a different page that looks quite different. Very little on the value proposition again, right? Support us, donate now. This you can get away with more than most because you probably have a bigger brand, more people know who you are. If they get to this stage, they have a better, plus your name, people know it's a museum in Ontario. But you should still have some copy, like are you fighting for the arts, are you promoting certain projects, like what is it that you're helping donors do? And I don't know why this is here. It seems like it's just taken off a reply card on direct mail, but you should use that for something that's more inspirational. And so designation, this is where we ran into again. This isn't that many. Research, education, accessibility, acquisitions, just again the challenge is so a donor goes, what's the difference between like what's acquisitions, getting new prints and stuff, new stuff for the gallery. So you're asking them to make a decision based on information that they don't really have. So do that very carefully, and then you've got more giving opportunities, which might not be good. So I'd say default museum-sized priorities, that's good. You know, try to limit this or even kind of remove it is one of the things we'd say. You've got radio buttons, again, which aren't great. And then to be paid. It's like, you owe us your money. You must complete your payment. Not the great language. So payment in full, right? This is payment language, it's not great. Avoid radio buttons, we've talked about. And this is why, on a mobile, the radio buttons are super annoying. They're annoying on desktops, but they're really annoying on mobile. The form uses horizontal space, but maybe not in the best way. Like if it could flow down, but use first name, last name, that would be a better thing on the form. I'm pretty sure you can't do that with the tool, but that's how we'd optimize. Same comments on phone, is it really required or not? Your in-memory expands, which is nice, so it's short and it only expands if people click yes. And then this is actually a good use of extra copy. So it says, please note, you'll go to an e-card on the next stage, that's where you can fill in your message. So you're proactively addressing someone's anxiety who puts in an email and goes, I didn't put my message, like, well, how do I talk to this person? You're saying, chill out, you'll get it on the next step. So that's a good use. For some of this stuff, we'd probably put in the footer. You don't necessarily want them clicking your privacy policy right before the donation button, but having this information, call, email, who to talk to, can be, but further down. You don't want it to stop the donation button. Donation button could be a little bigger, and then some security or trust marks. There's probably some room to, there's no real lockbox or secure, so it's not inherently clear that this donation page is secure. So error friction, this isn't the best way to handle it. Ideally, again, as I'm filling it out, if I missed a field, it would tell me, oh, first name, that goes red, and oh yeah, I gotta do this. Whereas if you go through and you click submit, then you're back to this page and it tells you all the things that you did wrong. And it's mandatory, right? So you maybe can't change the language, you probably can't even change how that is. But just the best way to do errors is in line. So right when someone makes an error, you got an error. All right, and then last one, and then we'll do some Q&A, I think. So inspire, you here? No, you're just stretching? Someone else is stretching, everyone's stretching. All right, inspire. So the visuals aren't bad. Same thing, we suggest using more copy. Who are you, what do you do, value proposition, offer, whatever it is. Secure, that's good. It's still a little technical. They link out to a different flow for monthly giving, which isn't ideal, or it's not the best. We'd suggest having buttons, right, instead of a drop down. Is that it on that page? The form is also, again, a little narrow and stuff like that. Same thing on phone, is it really required? This is a decent idea if you have a system in place where people can say their company and then you can give them information on how to make sure it gets matched. Again, some of this ideally you would do after a donation, right? Thank you. Is your gift eligible for a match? Let us know. The more information that you require for people before they complete could be a problem. And then same thing, the whole email opt-in castle, donor pro CMS, get them off. Then it's a really short confirmation page, which isn't that bad. It's a little weird charge card language. But here was the big problem with Inspire. Let's play a little game called Find the Donate page. I feel bad that they're not here. All right. So first part, right? Donate. Boom. All right. Click donate. Okay. We still got all this, but now we got all this stuff too. Money goes, ways to give, needs, student stories. But all right. Okay. Donate now. There it is. Oh my goodness. More ways to give. Subdomain. More ways to do this. I've clicked donate and donate now. Okay, I guess I want to do a one-time gift. For the love of God, let me make this donation. You may choose to support a one-time donation. I think there's a little value statement. It just took me like 8 clicks. Now make a one-time gift, please. And then it takes you into that page. So if you use donate now language, go to donate now. A ways to give page is very different than a donate now page, right? So I'll show you a couple examples of some of our preferred ones. Is literacy and evangelism here? I thought you were Fred Victor. No. The comment here is church organizations are typically the worst at this because your membership is so high motivation that they'll put up tons of friction, and so you won't change anything because you feel like you don't have to. And swim, fish. I'm happy to go through these with you afterwards if you're here, but I do want to show just a couple examples of good pages. Canadian France, we can go over yours later. So a good example, and again, not that this is perfect, not that this is the end all and be all. There's always ways to improve and optimize, but just walking through kind of why we did what we did. So in here, this is the value proposition with headline and then statements, trying to build trust and impact. 100% secure, so they know their donation will be secure. We have one-time and monthly options with what $50 does, $25 does. I don't know if it's best to be right left like that. It might be better underneath. I'm not sure. And then this is how we handle the idea of other ways to give or common questions. If you click common questions, it expands and it gives you the top 5 questions, like, are you a charity and where does my money go? It kind of answers those questions on the page with no links out. And then other ways to give, it'll say, call us or looking for gifts of stock or whatever, then go here, and then it links people out. So we're trying to address the concerns, but only if they click it, otherwise it looks nice and short. And then this organization is fantastic on their trust marks, so their ratings with different organizations. So we show those to kind of build credibility, and then we have information, registered charity, etc. When you click donate, you go to this form. It's the same thing, it's the organization, it's secure, there's no other links out and around. We're confirming how much you're giving, here's the form. If you click in honor, then it expands to who you're doing an email and whatever, and then donation, and then again we have the trust marks on there as well. So this is a different form of the example. We mentioned this before, but so Hillsdale, the organization, it's all copy, nothing but copy. And then they get into their form, buttons, other gift amount. They have 3 gift designations, I think. Nice, pretty simple form, big fields. And then you get into credit card information, which is shaded, and they've got a lockbox here. So you can fill it, $50 gift, bare minimum information in the footer. That's kind of what some of the research and elements in practice kind of look like. That's the checklist. That's more useful for when you get the slides in printed version. And I think now we'll chat.
And not just for Brady, but for all the great nonprofits and charities who have their donation pages so constructively ripped apart. Do we have any questions? I see one in the audience.
Hi, thank you so much for this. It's been great. Hi.
There you go.
So I just have a quick question in relation to language. We are a nonprofit, but we have partnered with a charitable organization in order to offer tax and charitable receipts.
Yeah.
We are currently using Canada Helps to process our donations, although our charitable receipt does come from another organization. What would be the best way to communicate that's not distracting or really kind of elicit that fear of credibility and trust? Really?
Yeah, it's a good question because it comes up in different forms. You've got a unique case, but for the most part, unless they know that it's coming from a different foundation while they're filling it out, I would solve it afterwards. So once they make a donation in the email, you'd say thanks for your donation, attaches your tax receipt from this foundation and who we've partnered with in order to offer you the advantage of a tax deduction, whatever. I'd offer it there. And anytime things get complicated, I think you should proactively, if you have any questions, contact this person at this phone number and address it then. If it does show up on the page, and it might on Canada Helps, like who you're giving to, then I would suggest a message as early as you can of saying like, this is a gift for your nonprofit. Then you have to explain it, otherwise people will go, this isn't who I know or who I'm giving to. So generally, solve the problem afterwards if you can, or as soon as it becomes an issue. So I'm not familiar enough with Canada Helps to know what you can and can't do. I know you can create like a custom page fund, and you might be able to have some language on there that gets at that problem. And then the confirmation email and confirmation page, probably do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, we will set up a donation page very soon, so we don't have one yet.
Okay, there you go.
So I'm just wondering about the amounts. Do you suggest a minimum amount and a maximum amount? And should we have a CRA number on it?
Yeah, good question. I do think the charity number is important. So it shouldn't be like featured, but it should be on the page, charity registration number. Minimum amount, we generally set ours low. So normally the lowest anchor, sometimes we'll go as low as 5 depending on who the client is. But generally, yeah, having a lower anchor amount, $20. Like some organizations say, minimum $40. Otherwise we won't process your gift. And I understand it from when you maybe needed to do everything manually. But if it's automated and the tax receipts, plus the stance of like, we won't, accept your money unless. So we err on the side of more inclusion, more transactions over time leads to more giving. And so that's why we try to remove barriers, and having a high minimum is a barrier. So we'd say push it a little lower, but I don't know if that answered your question. Yeah, without knowing your data. So normally what we'll do is we'll go through all our gifts online over a 3-year period, and we'll bucket them into the most common gifts, and those will be basically how we do the suggested donations as a starting point, and then we'll kind of test from there. But otherwise the generic is, 25, 50, 100, 250, 500, variants like that. And we suggest 4 and another. That's our starting point. 4 suggestions and another. But that's like that's very incremental testing stuff, like having a little bit lower, a little bit higher, 3 versus 4. That's not going to radically change your donations unless you have tons of volume, right? Having a value proposition and a good form is way more important than how many suggested donations. Yeah.
You mentioned the use of Stripe, which is a third-party payment. What do you see are the positives, and what do you see the downfalls of Stripe?
Yeah, good question. I'll clarify third-party payment. So you need to process payments no matter what you use or what you do. When I say third-party, I mean Canada Helps, I mean PayPal. Sometimes Blackbot products can be third-party where you link out and use someone else's tool. Stripe is like a merchant account. It just connects forms to bank accounts. So you use Stripe all the time and have no idea, right? It just collects information and verifies it's a credit card and puts it in your bank account. So it's IATS as a merchant service provider, Beanstream, which is now Bambora. These are just, you never interact with them as a user. They just process donations. Why we choose Stripe is it's very easy to build on. It integrates with MailChimp and FormStack, and our developers can code into it super easy. So the first stage of donation pages were kind of checkout, and then it was kind of like better version of checkout, and now increasingly the barriers to kind of do a custom page are so low using outsourced tools. That's pretty much all that we do. I will say our preferred donation tool is called Glass Register. It's brand new, it's still in beta, we're like their first client, but it's basically this stuff. It's just a form, but it uses Stripe, and it's really, really good. Did I answer your question?
Any tips on ensuring that pages load faster or pages load at all? Because common annoyances, you go to a site, it freezes, crashes, you reload, freezes, crashes.
Yeah, loading friction is the 8th element of friction that I didn't talk about, but it is absolutely a friction element. It's one of the downsides of embedding a form that is hosted somewhere else. So when you embed a Canada Helps form, or you embed a form that's not yours, sometimes there can be a lag, because it's basically, you hit this page, it's fetching out, grabbing the form, and if it's having an off day or something, then your page can load slowly.
Is it scripts and ads as well?
Sorry?
Is it scripts and ads?
Yeah. There's all kinds of things that can slow down your page. How you use JavaScript, if you lazy load your pages. It's another reason to minimalize your donation page, right? If it's copy and form, there's not a lot that can drag it down. Whereas if you have images and links and logos and video, and definitely don't put a video on there, that can often slow down. But speed is something for sure. People won't wait around for very long. It's definitely an element of friction. Good question. Did I answer? Yeah? Questions here or live streamers who are taking a nap? Oh, you want here?
I was hoping you could talk a little bit more about increasing open rates for email campaigns.
Sure.
I know subject lines are important, obviously, and organizations I've worked with have used individuals as the senders, but if you don't know who Dave Evans is, then the email's irrelevant.
Yeah.
But also in terms of subject lines, do you want to be sort of vague in like the Upworthy style so they like are enticed to click it, or do you want to be very clear, like support this cause?
Yeah.
What's more effective?
Okay, really good question, 2 parts. So one, we're absolutely believers that email should come from humans, but I don't know who Dave Evans is. So it should be either like Dave Evans at Royal Ontario Museum or something like that. We try to send all emails from humans, so even at the bottom it's like, from Dave, Director of Development or whatever. And again, it's all about trying to feel less like marketing, more like human. So there are some complications. You don't want to use Dave's actual email, so all this other stuff. So that part's good. For the subject lines, it's a matter of what's the goal of the email. Because the goal of the email is almost never an open. It's click and then probably some kind of action. So if the action you want someone to take is donation, I don't think being vague and mysterious is always the best approach. Because they go, what is this? It's a donation. Forget it. And now they're even maybe a little upset. Whereas if you're trying to get someone to read content, or you have some cool unveiling and you really just want people to read this thing and maybe share it, then something like a vague, mysterious headline would probably work better. But the goal is almost never open to click. Is never an open. You need them to open before they click, but that's why tracking conversions is really helpful. Because you may have super catchy subject line, better open rate, but very few people end up donating. And unless you can track it all the way through, you'll keep sending these emails that are vague and mysterious, but maybe not the best for donations. So the goal of the email should come first before you create the subject line. But generally speaking, I have a slide in here somewhere, you'll see it in the deck. Trying to answer that question, like what would make this person open our email as opposed to someone else's email, or just not open the email at all. Just a different phrasing of the value proposition question can hopefully allow you to answer it differently. So you go, how do we appeal, or how do we intrigue? But the big point is, what's the goal? Then you work back to subject line. You don't start with subject line. And that's an easy test. Subject lines are a pretty good test for the most part, because it's like the outer envelope of direct mail. It's a high lever, pretty easy test. So especially if you use MailChimp or any test, they split it for you, you can track it. So subject line is probably it's a pretty important test. I was going to say the most important test, but I'm not sure. It's very important.
So did you send out the same email, just different subject lines?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, and your tool should do that for you. Otherwise, you have to create 2 separate lists and 2 separate emails, 2 separate link codes. It's very problematic. Most good email tools just will do that for you. Our preferred tool is MailChimp. Does that answer? I'm super interested if other people have, answers or opinions. I'm not saying I'm always, right by any means. Yeah, go ahead.
I do know, or at least
I wish I remembered the URL, although I do remember coming across a website that will apparently test your subject lines. So if that might be something that people want to look at.
Yeah, the problem with a lot of those tools is they're not geared to fundraising, right? So you put in the subject lines and their algorithms are based on e-commerce, or they're based on shopping sites. And it's just, I'm always nervous to use that as gospel. It might be a great place to get insight, like, a lot of people who are shopping click on these subject lines, now let's test it for us. There's a lot of stuff that transfers over. Like if you shop, when you click like purchase or checkout, you don't have all these crazy links everywhere, right? Like checkout processes, they get you through the funnel. Like try to get out of a transaction once you're halfway into Amazon, it's super hard. So there's a lot we can learn from shopping, just the donor motivation is very different than the purchasing motivation. So I'm just always hesitant to just take whatever they do and instantly do it here. And that's what happens a lot with our fancy designed emails, and it's like, I love Apple's emails. You're not Apple. People don't think of you like Apple. So your Apple-looking emails don't mean anything to them.
So this is going to be our last question.
You started out with the Facebook thing with the GoFundMe.
Yeah, Fidencio.
Yeah, just thinking in terms of, I mean, because a lot of people are familiar with GoFundMe as an organization or group that does that. So is that something that we could use, do you think, to effect, to, like, for a special campaign or a special fundraising project? Or would that make people think, I'm not sure?
Yeah, it's a good question. Generally, we think you can replicate a lot of that on your own site. Story, value proposition, suggested amounts, donations. That's how you would run most campaigns. The benefit of GoFundMe and crowdfunding tools are A, they have their own audience, their own trust. People trust GoFundMe more than you'll trust, your own website. And they are baked in social. Everything's share and links and whatever. So there is some value to crowdfunding pages. It operates on a lot of science, like goals and thermometers. Studies show that the further you are on a thermometer, the more likely someone is to give. They have countdown clocks, they've got social feeds. These are all actually social factors that lead people to give. The downside is it's on a GoFundMe site. So now you're taking website traffic and people that you know, and then you're sending them over here. You often lose a lot of analytics. Often non-third parties, even good ones, you lose a lot of analytics, and you lose a lot of data in the process. So they issue tax receipts most of the time, so that you can't do welcome emails and you can't do some advanced marketing stuff. But if you're just saying, like, we don't have a donation page, we can't custom code, our own, and we have a 30-day campaign with a clear goal, I think it's not a bad idea to use a tool like that. I don't think it's the all year long solution and should be used sparingly, but those tools do a good job of incorporating a lot of good science into it.
All right, that's what we have time for today.
All right.
Brady. Everybody, please join me in thanking Brady for an extremely enlightening, really insightful event. We really appreciate it. Very meaningful.
Thanks for having me.
So that's the event, and we want to thank you all for coming out. You were a great audience. Brady, are you sticking around for a bit?
Yep.
So people can come talk to you. If you have any questions about TechSoup Canada, you can talk to me or any of the members of the TechSoup Canada team. We do ask that you drop off your name tag in the box that's labeled at the registration table there. And thank you and have a great day. Handouts. We have some materials there.